want to welcome everyone to our annual Martin Luther King Jr. discussion. I was thinking today, when I think of Martin Luther King, if I were to play word association, certainly martyr, kind of tragic, loss comes to mind. But actually, before that, revolutionary, strategic, service, community, dignity, amazing intelligence, those are words that come to mind when I think of Martin Luther King Jr. So I think of someone who, despite all the risks, was so committed to using nonviolent action to drive sustainable change. And I say that because that's really important when I think of his legacy. He didn't want a flash in the pan change. So sustainable change for justice and equality. And with that in mind, that's why each year we're very fortunate to hear from a community leader who's amplifying the Martin Luther King Jr. legacy through their own service, intelligence, and grit. These respected leaders are making positive and lasting impacts in our community each and every day. So I'm so tempted to skip over Angela and introduce Latarsha, but I'm not going to, because folks may not realize it, but Angela is always looking around and has a great list of speakers each year. So it's only right that she get to introduce this year's Martin Luther King Jr. mover and shaker. Angela?
Thank you, Dr. Hancock. Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome our esteemed guest speaker today, Latarsha Burke. Latarsha is the CEO and Executive Director of the African American Cultural Collaborative of Mercer County. She is an alumnus of the College of New Jersey and a fellow of the Princeton Theological Urban Cohorts Program. With a strong dedication to improving community life through arts, education, and culture, Mrs. Burke leads the African American Cultural Collaborative in providing free programming for all ages, access to family-oriented activities, and opportunities for collaboration across cultures. Under her leadership, the collaborative has formed partnerships and collaborations to produce various events, including the Trenton African American Cultural Festival, Youth Sports Expo, Juneteenth weekend celebration, and more. With a professional career spanning 28 years in youth and family welfare, Mrs. Burke has made a significant contribution to the safety and stability of New Jersey communities. She is actively involved in various organizations and serves as a board member while also being a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Inc., Epsilon Upsilon Omega chapter. And while her professional accomplishments are undoubtedly impressive, Mrs. Burke attests that her greatest accomplishment lies in a different capacity, as a mother, grandmother, and wife of 26 years. Latarsha's remarkable involvement in the community has been instrumental in creating a more inclusive and equitable society. Her tireless efforts serve as an inspiration to all who strive for positive change, and we are so honored to have her join us for this event. It is my honor to welcome Latarsha Burke, who will share her insights and experiences, shedding light on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s impact and how his vision continues to resonate today.
Wow, Angela, thank you. I want to say thank you to Thomas Edison State University's president, Dr. Hancock, the board of directors, faculty, and staff for this amazing opportunity. And again, welcome to all in attendance. It is my absolute pleasure to present to you about the impact of service, volunteerism, how it can be life-changing, and the legacy of the civil rights legend, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. To begin, Maya Angelou stated, "I have found that among its other benefits, giving liberates the soul of the giver." The sole word liberate stands out for me. To liberate someone from something means to help them escape from it or overcome it and lead a better way of life. The service of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did just that, liberate. His life's mission aimed to help all who experience any form of inequity or injustice. In my research, I explored who or what could have been the source of inspiration or influence to Dr. King's relentless pursuit of justice? What and whom did he study? Who did he confide in and surround himself with to move his mission forward? What life-changing events in his life moved him to the direction of service? Liberation is the foundation, the core. However, my thoughts wandered the effects of the emotional impact when immersed in this form of awakening. And just to clarify the term awakening, I'm referring to being conscious of the disparities and how those disparities impact individuals, families, communities, and impact generation after generation. And understanding how, as a result of the history of our ancestors, there's a deeply embedded trauma that hides in our DNA and with the potential to control our thoughts, our perceptions, and response to conflict. The experience of consciousness can drive you into hiding or cause you to take a stand, otherwise known as fight or flight. If you choose to fight, wow, the experiences that you take on change you. It causes a metamorphosis where you no longer recognize the person you ultimately become, all in the name of liberation. Selflessness, undying sacrifice, and dedication to the people. In the midst of your service, you are experiencing an onslaught of emotions, from happiness, witnessing what happens when we gel, bring together our gifts, resources, and finances to support the greater good, to sadness when we compete with one another for crumbs and fail to share the wealth or withhold valuable resources or lessons learned. Excitement, taking in the beauty of our people, of diversity, the many cultures, the intelligence of our youth, the hidden talents of so many, but most importantly, the feeling of accomplishment, the energy that you are filled with when you witness the finished product of your team's hard work. For instance, the impactful results of the collaboratives and events in partnership with other amazing organizations. Some of those events include the Trenton African American Cultural Festival, Juneteenth celebration, First Fridays downtown Trenton, the Levitt Amp concert series, the African American History Bowl, and more. Each event would not be accomplished without the support of sponsors and volunteers who are dedicated, passionate, and have a sincere love for all people, regardless of race or ethnic background. Then there's disappointment when there are so many organizations doing great work and have a mission and a vision to serve their communities, but must literally fight for funding, professional development opportunities, and volunteers. The overwhelming sense of pride, and most importantly, hope, when you take a look back at the collaborative's journey, the time, investment, and commitment is worth every second. With that being said, when I think of the young Dr. King and his consciousness, it's just overwhelming to digest the weight of it all, the heaviness of it all. He did not turn back, did not go into hiding, did not make excuses. He held fast. He moved forward until he could not. And when you take into account his age, but God, In the book, My Grandmother's Hands, Racial Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies by author Resma Menakem, is stated, at first glance, today's manifestation of conflict appears to be a struggle for political and social power. But as we'll see, the real conflict is more visceral. It is a battle for the souls and bodies of white Americans. While we see anger and violence in the streets of our country, the real battlefield is inside our bodies. If we are to survive as a country, it is inside our bodies where this conflict will need to be resolved. And he goes on to say, no matter what we look like, if we were born and raised in America, white body supremacy and our adaptation to it are in our blood. Our very body houses the unhealed dissonance and trauma of our ancestors. Whether you have a GED, a high school diploma, a master's degree, a doctorate degree, or in a leadership role, you cannot escape the trauma of how this nation was built. Dr. King understood this fact. He battled ferociously and non-violently. He used spirituality, education to keep his mind. He used spirituality, education, his mind as a weapon, and his innate ability to connect with all people, regardless of race, and recruit them to support his cause. The fact was recognized by many of Dr. King's peers, such as the late activist Kwame Ture, who stated, in order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. More than often, I wonder, why me? Why the Cultural Collaborative team? Many ask, why do you do this work in addition to a full-time job? Many event attendees say, oh, you're just doing this because you're planning to run for office. My best answer has been, this is a God-given mission. I will not refuse. I will not run away, hide from a calling that God has placed on my life. Dr. King stated, use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, excuse me, everyone, and what I can do and use it for a greater purpose than myself. As a result, I'm leading a cause greater than myself. The mission of the African American Cultural Collaborative of Mercer County is to improve the quality of life for our community through arts, education, and culture. We provide opportunities for diverse families to come together in a positive, safe environment to build communities through collaboration across cultures. Our values include unity, coming together to bridge cultural gaps, legacy, recognizing the sacrifice of our ancestors, community, celebrating people of color, integrity, uncompromised commitment, education, acknowledging the contributions and journey and educating on true history. And lastly, commitment, engaging the community in cultural excellence. We have not strayed from this commitment to our community. God continues to send us angels to lift us in our most trying moments. I know deeply that the future of this organization is destined for greatness. She doesn't know, but the organization's public relations chair, Helen Jones Walker, is persistent with one statement that rings loud in my thoughts when moving the organization. We operate only in excellence. Moreover, about my thoughts of Dr. King. Dr. Martin Luther King was a son, a brother, an uncle, a father, a grandson, a pastor, a friend, and so much more. He came from a lineage of family members who rejected the constraints of society. Dr. King spoke of witnessing racism early in life. He remembered witnessing his father stand up to a policeman who stopped the elder King for a traffic violation and referred to him as a quote unquote boy. According to King Jr., his indignant father responded by pointing to his son and asserting, "This is a boy. I am a man. Until you call me one, I will not listen to you." Dr. King credited his father with influencing his decision to join ministry, saying, "He set forth a noble example that I did not mind following." To reiterate, based on my personal experience, and I'm quite sure that of my peers who are dedicated to the greater good, collaboration is necessary. As Dr. King stated, we cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must take a pledge that we shall march ahead. We cannot turn back. The emphasis is we. Dr. King acknowledged, after becoming a civil rights leader and a Nobel Peace Prize winner, that his life as a Baptist preacher was his being, his heritage. He explained, "For I am also the son of a Baptist preacher, the grandson of a Baptist preacher, the great grandson of a Baptist preacher. It is quite easy for me to think of a God of love, mainly because I grew up in a family where love was central and where lovely relationships were ever present." In my research, I further discovered that King Jr.'s maternal great-grandfather, Willis Williams, who was born in 1810, was described as an old slavery time preacher and an exhorter. In 1846, when Willis joined Shiloh Baptist Church in Greene County, Georgia, its congregation numbered 50 white and 28 Black members, with African Americans actively participating in church affairs and serving on church committees. In 1855, nearly 100 Blacks joined the congregation, including 15-year-old Lucretia, also known as Creasy Daniel. She and Willis were married in the late 1850s or early 1860s, and she bore him 5 children, including Adam Daniel Williams, King Jr.'s grandfather. The family left Shiloh Baptist Church when it, like other Southern congregations, divided along racial lines at the end of the Civil War. Born in Atlanta in April 1873, Jenny Celeste Parks, King Jr.'s maternal grandmother, was one of 13 children. Her father, William Parks, supported his family through work as a carpenter. At age 15, Jenny Parks began taking classes at Spelman Seminary, but she left in 1892 without graduating. Married to A.D. Williams on October 29, 1899, she was a deeply pious woman who always kept a Bible nearby and was a model wife for a minister. On September 13th, 1903, she gave birth at home to her only surviving child, Alberta Christine Williams, the mother of King Jr. During the early years of the century, the family lived in several houses in the Auburn Avenue area, which was then home to both whites and blacks. The Williams transformed nearby Ebenezer Baptist Church from a struggling congregation without a building in the 1890s into one of Black Atlanta's most prominent institutions. My purpose for sharing these facts about Dr. King's family is he came from humble beginnings and during times that could have broken his grandfather, his grandmother, and his mother. I believe that through the family's connection and dedication to their spiritual life, they were protected by a shield that no one could break. Through the trauma, I'm sure Dr. King's family experienced, but they did persevere. I'm sure many of us have experienced inequities in our day-to-day life. And regardless of those inequities and discrimination, we have continued to move forward with the hope that every generation will do their part to ensure accountability. We must uphold what is written. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Although Dr. King was the product of such an amazing family, it's no secret that education was at the forefront of Dr. King's upbringing. Dr. King's young mind, what and or who shaped Dr. King's ideology? I just want to share a few. John Donne, a few weeks before his March 31st speech, speaking at Grosse Pointe High School, Dr. King quoted Donne in saying, "No man is an island." Donne was an English poet who wrote around the turn of the 17th century. King explained the context, his inspiration. The tide that fills every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And Donne goes on toward the end to say, any man's death diminishes me because I'm involved in mankind. Therefore, it's not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Somehow we must come to see that in this pluralistic society, we are all tied together in a single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. The next would be Washington Irving. On March 31st, the same day as his other speech, Dr. King also addressed an audience at the National Cathedral in Washington, saying, "The most striking thing about the story of Rip Van Winkle is not merely that Rip slept through 20 years, but that he slept through a revolution." Rip Van Winkle is the famous story by the 19th century storyteller Washington Irving about a man who goes to sleep while King George III rules the colonies and wakes up in a new world where George Washington is president. King continued in this speech, "All too many people find themselves living amid a great period of social change. and yet they fail to develop the new attitudes, the new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. I know one thing for certain. I want to be wide awake, engaged, and a contributor to the positive change in the world. The next was Gandhi. Earlier, in a 1962 religious sermon in Los Angeles, King counseled against anger and hate, saying, "There is another way." As modern as Gandhi's saying through Thoreau, that non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good. King read the works of Gandhi and quoted him throughout his life. There is a direct line of the teachings of civil disobedience and peaceful demonstration from Dr. King through Gandhi. And lastly, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Shortly before his death in October of 1967, Dr. King spoke to students at Barrett Junior High School in Philadelphia. He said, Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great essayist, said in a lecture in 1871, "If a man can write a better book, or preach a better sermon, or make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, even if he builds his house in the woods, the world will make a beaten path to his door." This hasn't always been true, but it will become increasingly true. And so I will urge you to study hard, to burn the midnight oil. Emerson, like Thoreau, was a transcendentalist author who was among the intellectual leaders of the movement. They opposed slavery and spoke out against the Civil War. The work and the mission of the African American Cultural Collab of Mercer County is not the first of its kind. There has been many before us that has fought to improve the quality of life for their communities. This organization draws from the passion of its predecessors. I discovered that there were African American parades in the 70s, cultural enrichment and entertainment in the historic Catwater Park, thriving Black businesses that were invested in the community. Schools such as the African People Action School focus on immersing students in their history and culture, advocates for quality education. The collaborative and others are continuing the work of our ancestors. I wondered, who did Dr. King observe, consult? Who did he surround himself with to move his work forward? We must mention a few of the historic figures that, as the late Representative John Lewis stated, were known to get in good trouble, necessary trouble. One being Ida B. Wells, a dedicated journalist and feminist. She used investigative reporting to shed light on the horrors of the lynching of Black Americans in the Jim Crow South. Wells was also a co-founder of the NAACP and worked alongside Susan B. Anthony during the women's suffrage movement. Then we have Mary Church Terrell, a graduate of Oberlin College. Mary Church Terrell used her status as a member of the upper-class Black community to promote the advancement of her people through activism and education. A former slave, Terrell's father was one of the South's first Black millionaires, according to the National Women's History Museum. Terrell co-founded the National Association of Colored Women and the NAACP. There was also Dorothy Height. After becoming president of the National Council of the Negro Women, Dorothy Height served in the position for 40 years, making her one of the most trusted and leading voices for Black women during the Civil Rights Movement. It was during this time she advocated for criminal justice reform and was vocal about the tragedies of lynching in the South. The Women's History Museum credits her exemplary organizing skills as a way that she earned the trust of the likes of Eleanor Roosevelt, President Lyndon B. Johnson, Dr. King Jr., and President Dwight D. Eisenhower. As a leading organizer, Height was also welcome on the speaker stage at the 1963 March on Washington, representing the only women's group involved in the demonstration. In 1994, she was honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and in 2004, she was given the Congressional Gold Medal. It's no secret that Dr. King was the ultimate organizer. With his mind, I'm certain he strategically created a team that was just as assertive and passionate as he was. When I reviewed some of the individuals in his circle, my God, what a team. I literally had to pause thinking about these young people who were such a force, relentless in their pursuit and advocacy for justice. One being John Lewis, who served as a Georgia congressman since 1986. He learned about nonviolent protests while studying at Nashville's American Baptist Theological Seminary and went on to organize sit-ins at segregated lunch counters. Then we had Bayard Rustin, who was a close advisor of Dr. King beginning in the mid-1950s, who assisted with organizing the Montgomery bus boycott and played a key role in orchestrating the 1963 March on Washington. He's also credited with teaching King about Mahatma Gandhi's philosophies of peace and tactics of civil disobedience. After moving to New York in the 1930s, he was involved in many early civil rights protests, including one against North Carolina's segregated public transit system that resulted in his arrest. An openly gay man, Rustin also advocated for LGBT rights. And next is James Farmer. Aside from heading a prominent civil rights era organization, the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE, James Farmer also organized the 1961 Freedom Rides, which eventually led to interstate travel desegregation. The Howard University graduate was also a follower of Gandhi's philosophies and applied their principles to his own acts of nonviolent civil resistance. Morehouse graduate Julian Bond was a prominent and outspoken figure of the civil rights movement. While a student at the HBCU, he co-founded the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee alongside John Lewis. The SNCC was opposed to the Vietnam War and repeatedly directed the national media's attention to the racist treatment of Black Americans in the South. And there are many more to name, but I only have 30 minutes. The audacity. Dr. King stated, "I have the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits." If Dr. King was alive today, he will witness the seeds he planted as vast as the cotton fields that have become a major source of the economy at the hands of free labor. As we all know, today we are still fighting for reparations. to recoup the investment and losses of our ancestors through forced labors in the United States of America. In hindsight, I do not recall anyone in my family being engaged in the movement. My first exposure to the beauty of Black culture was during a visit to my grandmother's home in Queens, New York. I believe I was about 8 years old at the time. My Aunt Sil and Aunt Joanne were saying different. Their style was the tell-all. The afros, very low haircuts, large earrings, Afrocentric styled attire, and a womanly presence and freedom that I had not yet seen. I recall taking the train with my aunts and my two youngest siblings to Harlem, New York. It was Harlem Week. The sounds, the music, the people, the food, the culture, the unity. My aunt purchased me my first purse made of leather and fringe, and it was red, black, and green. I still, at that time, did not understand the significance. I was born in Newark, New Jersey, raised in Jersey City, New Jersey, and spent many summers with my grandfather and aunt in Cedar Creek, North Carolina. I believe I had the best of both worlds. I had a humble upbringing, raised by my mom and stepdad, with infrequent visits by my father. Both my parents had high school educations, but my mother made a decision to move from the country to the city, foregoing a full ride scholarship to college. I believe this may have been the reason she was overzealous with my and my siblings' academic achievements. Failure or mediocrity was not an option. I worked so hard on my studies in high school. Looking back, I would say it was an unhealthy fixation. During my high school years, I worked after school at the local public library and volunteered at the library on Saturdays. I watched my siblings after school, cooked dinner, and more until my parents arrived home. During summers, as an elementary school student, I watched my siblings. Those summers, we would spend all day in the library. That was our summer camp. Literacy, education was my escape. There were times my mother would force me to go outside. I would be crouched in a corner reading a book in my small room. When I was forced to go outside, I would sit on my porch reading a book. My escape. I became so familiar to my neighborhood and people driving by due to my sitting on the porch reading. The neighborhood drug dealers would slow down as they blasted their music, blowing their horn, wave, and continue on. To this day, I say those unsavory folks that was a part of my community became my siblings' protectors. They would never allow us to be in harm's way. I graduated from Lincoln High School, third in my class, and was devastated because my hopes for valedictorian was crushed. Scholarships and the Educational Opportunity Fund at Trenton State College was my gateway and opened many doors. I attended Trenton State College, now the College of New Jersey. However, my parents were pushing for the military. That was the career pathway for many families that migrated from the South. I arrived to Trenton State College, a predominantly white college. The culture shock could have steered me away. Leaving a high school comprised of 90% Blacks and Latinos to being the minority in an educational setting was overwhelming. I never forget my first English class. I wrote a 20-page paper. I was the only Black student in the class. The professor presented the grades and he read each grade out loud, and each student would have to walk up to the desk to retrieve the paper. He called my name, Latarsha Williams. You call this college writing? All I can see was red throughout my paper. The professor said to do the entire paper again. I was devastated. I thought I was smart. I graduated third in my class, a 98.6 average. This was the point when I realized how far behind I really was. In reality, I was not far behind in urban schools, but it was obvious to me that the quality of education in suburbia was at a greater, more challenging level. I was shocked at how much the other students knew, the books they read, that I knew nothing about. This is my early introduction to the disparities that overtake individual progress and progress in communities of color. I commend my mother. She raised a fighter. I did the paper. She was a great example of perseverance. However, what transformed my naive thinking in college was a visit from Stokely Carmichael, aka Kwame Ture. Yes, Kwame Ture spoke at Trenton State College. When he walked into the room, the power, the strength, the intelligence resonated with me. His speech focused on the responsibility of the next generation of leaders. My career began as a juvenile detention officer at the Mercer County Youth Detention Center in Ewing, New Jersey. There was absolutely nothing in a textbook that will prepare me for the realities of the judicial system, child protection, and social service system. My career choices led me to volunteerism. The trauma I experienced in my roles, witnessing the plight of families, the children, the teens, witnessing the living conditions, the undesirable homes, the impoverished neighborhoods. The trauma these families experienced was fixated in my mind. Their inability to remove themselves from these environments caused many sleepless nights. Dr. King's life work focused on curing these inequities. My thoughts were, if they can't get to it, I want to be a part of bringing happiness to them. I wanted them to know that they come from a great legacy of kings and queens, of warriors, of those who invested in more than just themselves. 2011 was when my life changed. The opportunity came for me to give back outside of my 9 to 5. And to be honest, I was fearful. I sat on my couch contemplating if I should attend the first meeting for an initiative aimed at educating and empowering the community about their history and culture. I prayed that day for a word, and it came through my husband. He said, "What are you going to do? Tasha, go to the meeting." And since that day, my journey alongside a multitude of members of the Trenton Mercer County community with the same focus of education and empowerment has been life-changing. I thank God for what has been done in my life through service. Through this work, the collaborative has been blessed with such wonderful champions of our mission. In addition, service has drawn other opportunities for service with like-minded individuals. Not only do I serve the African American Cultural Collaborative of Mercer County with every ounce of my being, I'm a proud member of the first and finest Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Epsilon Upsilon Omega chapter, a board member of the New Jersey Black Women's Collective, a board member of the Steeplechase Center Arts and Cultural Center, president of the College of New Jersey's African American and Latino alumni network. I have formerly served on the board of Artworks Trenton and the City of Trenton's Ellerslie Museum. Service has allowed me to connect with some amazing human beings. I can't conclude this speech without mentioning the phenomenal team of the African American Cultural Collaborative. Words cannot express my gratitude to my fellow champions of service. Helen Jones Walker, Public Relations Chair. Patrick Hall, Outreach Chair. Regina M. Jackson, Volunteer Chair. Cheryl Thomas, Executive Assistant. Sheila Garvin Glover, Treasurer. Timothy Robinson, Cultural Education Chair. Katie Anatiri, Administrative Assistant. Patrice LaVenture, Outreach Committee. Andrea Atkinson, Outreach Committee. And to my amazing advisors, Mr. Gene Bowie, Pastor Gerald Trueheart, Pastor Thaddeus Taylor, Lieutenant Bethesda Stokes Turner, and Honorary Chair Judge Mark McKithen, and a host of volunteers and supporters. And without dedicated sponsors such as Thomas Edison State University, our work would be in vain and at some point come to a halt. Our sponsors are unlike any other. They stick with us through the struggle and they celebrate with us. I pray our ancestors are proud. The legacy continues. It continues with us all. The African American Cultural Collab of Mercer County needs you. As the organization grows, we need additional sponsors. We need more partners. We need more volunteers. Your investment in this organization is a necessity. I want every volunteer that's helped us in moving our mission forward to see the fruits of their labor and plant seeds for the next up and coming shakers and movers to continue the important work of Dr. King, of our ancestors. In conclusion, a quote by Coretta Scott King, who was just as a powerful presence and stood side by side with her husband. She stated, "When you are willing to make sacrifices for a great cause, you will never be alone." The African American Cultural Collab of Mercer County is not alone. Just know that we are thankful and we are blessed beyond measure. A huge thank you to our sponsor since 2014, Thomas Edison State University, for this opportunity. It's my hope I served you well. For additional updates about upcoming opportunities to volunteer, sponsor, or vend, visit our website at taacf.com. Email us at trentonaapride@gmail.com or just call us at 609-474-4073. Juneteenth celebration and the Levitt Trenton Music Series is on the horizon. We hope to see you there. Blessings to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Latarsha. That was truly inspirational. My name is Juliet Pancello, and I'm here to do the closing remarks. And I have learned so much from you through your personal story today. It's something that will live with me and that I will learn from. On behalf of Dr. Hancock and the entire Thomas Edison State University community, I would like to sincerely thank you for sharing your inspirational story, your wisdom, experience, and passion as we gather today to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on this holiday. As the executive director of the African American Cultural Collaborative of Mercer County. You lead an organization which supports unity, culture, education, legacy, integrity, and commitment to moving forward the cause of equality, which, as you said, through your own tears today, is greater than yourself. Thank you for sharing your message with us today and reminding us of our collective power to move and push Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s commitment to equality ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Christina Wilson, and I'm going to be facilitating the question and answer portion of today's program. So we do have a couple of prepared questions, but if any of our attendees have questions, please feel free to type them in the Q&A portion of the Zoom. All right, so our first question is, from your perspective, how have Dr. King's teachings and principles played a role in addressing specific challenges or fostering positive developments within the Trenton community?
So, from my experience, volunteerism, yeah, it can begin as a mission where you are kind of naive to the obstacles that you may confront. And we have, and I'm saying we, the Cultural Collab team, we've confronted many obstacles just to give within our own community. But because we're such a strong team, we build each other up. We have amazing resources, and we use those resources and our advisory team to continue to push this work forward. Dr. King and the many legendary civil rights activists from the past is a source of inspiration for myself. And we often have discussion within the team that if they didn't get tired, we have no right to be tired or to give up on this amazing work that we're doing. And when we see the outcome of our events and the feedback from the attendees, it just energizes us even more. So we've already decided that quitting is not an option, that we must continue to push forward regardless of any obstacle that confronts us.
Great. And can you share examples of how Dr. King's messages of justice, equality, and solidarity have been applied by individuals or groups to address local challenges or local issues and to promote community empowerment in Trenton?
There's so many to name. For instance, we took notice that there had not been many after-school type programs for our youth in the Trenton community to attend to a safe space, right? Since 2011, Trenton has battled against violence within our own communities, right? And we had to figure out a way to bring young people out, to bring adults out, and ensure that they are in a safe environment at all times, right? And due to relationships with other amazing organizations, with the Trenton Free Public Library, with the City of Trenton, we were able to host a space for spoken word, our poetry cafe series, our visual arts competition preparation for our youth. And we were just targeting the youth, but we were surprised when more adults would come to these events than the youth. So utilizing Dr. King's vision of one, providing opportunities for cultural enrichment and education at no cost. All of our events since 2011 has been free to the community. And I believe that is also an open door for those who wish to be involved. who wish to show all their many hidden talents, their wish to be a part of something, again, greater than themselves. So I solely believe that due to our year-round fundraising, our ability to host these cultural experience for our communities without finances being a barrier, that we are impacting all ages more than what we can even understand.
Excellent. How do you believe Dr. King's vision for educating the community and bringing people together contributes to creating a more diverse and inclusive nation today?
When I think of the overarching nation, I think my focus is more on a local level, right? Because we have to impact locally in order to see the greater good, right? And how that influences on a larger scale. My focus are these communities. My focus are the communities that no one wants to go to. My focus are the families that folks are afraid of working with. And because of that, when we build up those communities, when we educate those communities about their history, culture, it creates a positive, welcoming environment on a local level. It allows for people to come out of their doors and fellowship with their neighbors without fear. So that has been our focus, is to let's start at the local level. And once you cure what's going on locally, it will impact on a greater, broader level.
Got it. All right, our next question is, in what ways has Dr. King's legacy continued to resonate in today's society, and how has it influenced ongoing movements for justice and equality?
Oh man, the number of movements that are happening nationally, and there are some that get more media coverage than others. Day to day, and I'm sure all of you do. You watch the news and you see these large movements against civil disobedience, against the inequities, against discrimination. Um, but what's profound to me is that organizations like myself, that are local, that are ran by volunteers, members of that particular community, they're not highlighted. There's some amazing work going on within local communities at the ground level, at the grassroots level. If I can just explain to you guys the struggle it is to prove that you are worthy of support. The length of time is taking for us to develop those relationships with sponsors, right? To become familiar within our own communities. That's the work in itself. The events is just the icing on the cake. But the background work is the work that folks do not see. And I just believe that organizations, grassroots organizations, really need to be lifted. And in my speech, I spoke to professional development, right? I have an amazing team of people, an amazing team of volunteers who aspire to be small business owners, right? What resources are we providing them at no cost, right? What form of professional development are we providing grassroots organizations similar to the collaborative to build that organization up, to build the leaders of that organization up? There's a lot of red tape when it comes to giving back to your community, and that should not be.
Got it. All right, our next question is, could you elaborate on specific aspects of Dr. King's vision that have contributed to a deeper understanding of the transformative power of his work, and how these principles continue to inspire positive change in the world today?
Ooh, that's a long question.
Yes.
Could you take it piece by piece because I can't see it on the screen? So I'm
I
a
will break
visual
it down.
person.
Yes. Okay. Could you elaborate on specific aspects of Dr. King's vision that have contributed to a deeper understanding of the transformative power of his work? And I'll stop right there because there's more to the question.
I think what comes to the forefront for me is early on when developing my team, we named ourselves the African American Cultural Collaborative of Mercer County. You know, in my head, I wanted to be one of the only Black 100% Black ran organizations, you know, within the county or within the state of New Jersey. That was my aim. I wanted to show folks that we can come together as a people and do amazing work. But that wasn't Dr. King's vision. His vision was for all people of all races, of all colors to come together to do profound work. And with embracing that, we have embraced all races to come together. We changed our name to Cultural Collaborative, right? It's important that we learn about each other, that we educate each other about our different cultures and experiences. And what pleases me most is that now, today, during our celebration, during our different events within the community, is diverse. You know, we get support, sponsors from a diverse group of people. Juneteenth is comprised of all races attending those events. Our entertainment and cultural performances is comprised of a diverse group of people. And I believe that pushes Dr. King's vision forward.
All right. So I will ask you the second portion of that question.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to try and chop it up. Could you elaborate on specific aspects of Dr. King's vision that, well, we already elaborated on how they contributed to the deeper understanding, but can you elaborate on how these principles continue to inspire positive change in the world today?
Yeah, Dr. King's vision, his principles, just his overall power of just, you know, confronting everything that was just put in front of him, and using his circle, his team, right? I'm sure there were certain areas that Dr. King might not have been too strong in, right? And he used his team to push the mission forward. Dr. King's legacy, I believe, has never dimmed, never dimmed. And for those who are in service organizations such as mine, we look for inspiration from Dr. King and many others. In my speech, I said, why me? Right? Why the cultural collaborative, right? And I'm sure during Dr. King's time and during his peers' time, they probably asked the same question. You know, it's easy for me, myself, to raise my children, dedicate all of my time to my family, work my 9 to 5, retire, and just live happily ever after, right? But, you know, all in all, it's more to life than just what you can do for yourself. And we have to extend that olive branch. In my work as a caseworker, those families to me are forgotten. You know, there's no organization or state agency that can touch families the way that we can as a people one-on-one, right? And that's how I pursued my work throughout these last 20 plus years. There are families within the Trenton community alone that I still connect with. There are teenagers that I still connect with. There are those that know that they can reach out to the Cultural Collab for resources, for guidance. And that's what we need. And that was the vision of Dr. King, that we help and support our neighbor.
Excellent. All right, next question. How does Dr. King's message of nonviolent activism and peaceful resistance offer valuable insights for navigating contemporary challenges and promoting constructive dialogue in pursuit of positive societal change?
I'm sure it was tough for Dr. King to hold on to his nonviolent beliefs, right? Even today within our own communities, it appears that, in a way that we have resorted to violence, but that goes back to um, society's inability to deal with trauma, right? To deal with mental health, to deal with poverty. There are just so many layers that causes violence, right? So organizations, again, like the collaborative, we do not at any point in this journey condone any form of violence. We do not approach struggles and barriers with any form of violence, whether it be, of course, not physical, verbal, just underlying sabotaging of other organizations in order to put a major light on what we're doing. We see how violence has destroyed our neighborhoods. So much of our programming is aimed at redirecting that energy, right? Providing opportunities for self expression, providing resources for employment opportunities or educational opportunities, educating a person about their culture and their history, like instilling a sense of pride in them, having them understand that if they don't have immediate family to lean on, that there's others in the community that they're able to go to for that support.
Thanks. So it looks like we don't have any questions in the Q&A, which is great. We just have a lot of praise for you. A couple of your sorors are saying excellent work. But yeah, okay. So if no other questions, going once, going twice. All right, I don't see anything else. So I'd like to thank you for your time today and your wonderful presentation. Again, the Q&A is filled with praise, and we really got a lot from today's talk. So thank you everyone for attending, and that concludes today's program.
Thank you.